right, everybody, welcome. This is Project Herpetoculture podcast. I'm your host, Roy Arthur Blodgett, and usually I'm joined by the dashing Philip Leitz of Arids Only, but he's not able to join us tonight. He's got some other obligations, so I'm going to be flying solo, but I have an excellent guest that I'm excited to introduce. And before I do that, I'm going to go through our standard housekeeping. And first, I want to give a shout out to Charlie, who edits our audio and kind of keeps us on the rails here, makes this a listenable experience for everybody. And I also want to mention Dylan and the Animals at Home Network for hosting our podcast. It continues to just be a pleasure to be part of this network, and we're really grateful for that. And I also want to talk about our sponsors. So we've got Custom Reptile Habitats, and they produce amazing PVC, HDPE, reptile enclosures. And they also have a full product line of supplies, including like universal rock backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. And if you're in the market for any of that and you're looking to make a purchase, please do so through the link in our description and bio, and we'll receive a small commission at no additional cost to you. That really helps us out with keeping the show going and improving our equipment upgrades and all of that, which we're scheduled to do here pretty soon. So there's that. We also have Cold-Blooded Caffeine, and they make amazing coffees, roasting from all over the world. We have a private label with them. It's a single origin from Rwanda. And they have a whole bunch of other coffees as well to try. They're all delicious of the ones I've tried so far. So give them a try and use the code Project Herp for 10% off your order. And lastly, we have Fairy Tale Dragons. So that's Heather Moy and Ron St. Pierre. They're legends in herpetoculture. They need very little introduction from a neophyte like myself. But yeah, check them out if you're in the market for bearded dragons or other cool, obscure herpetofauna. And yeah, thanks to them for supporting our show. It really means a lot. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest, and that is Till from Till's Reptile Room on Instagram. And Till is joining us all the way from Germany. So Till, thank you so for making time and being here today.
Yeah. Hi, Roy. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm very excited, and yeah, let's have a nice conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. Great. Well, to begin, I'm sure our listeners and I would also love to hear a little bit about just how you got started with herpetoculture. Where did it begin for you?
Yeah, I think as a child, I was, like most of us, very into dinosaurs and interested in wildlife and animals and stuff. And my uncle works at a bookshop. And when we were little, my little brother and I always could pick up our own gifts after we had birthday or Christmas or something. So we went there and went through the store and searched for some books that we would like to read. And I found this encyclopedia for kids, and it was like the alphabet of animals. So with every letter of the alphabet, there was an animal species introduced, and I was like, oh, I need that one. And yeah, so that, I think that was one of the starting points where I read through all of this and was like, oh, that's cool. And learning more about animals. And yeah, as a child, I was very into reading, read a lot and read even more about animals. And yeah, when the age came that I could use the internet, I was like, oh, interesting. You can keep some exotics. Probably I should do that. And my parents weren't that excited about this idea at first. Yeah, so we went to a reptile store and checked it out and everything. And they were like, no, maybe a tarantula isn't the best starter for for a child. So I got an aquarium, started with like the basic fish that you keep in an aquarium, had a shrimp tank and stuff like that. And yeah, eventually I started visiting zoos and stuff. And my parents once gifted me the be a zookeeper for one day at one of the local zoos, where you could walk around with one of the zookeepers and building stuff to entertain the animals. and I really liked that. And yeah, so it went on, and they offered me to get some of the stick insects because they had a lot. And I was discussing this with my parents, and they allowed me to get some stick insects. And then I told this story at school, and there was this one guy that just came into our class and sat right before me and turned around. I can give you something better. Do you heard about the praying mantis? And he just imported a praying mantis from Spain. Like he was on vacation with family and took it with him. And so I got my first animal that was not a fish. And yeah, that kind of started it all. But spoiler alert, the praying mantis was dead like after 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah. Often how it goes with those, unfortunately.
Yeah, true. And yeah, then everything kind of went its way. So I started with bearded dragons as first reptiles. At some point, I also bred them once. And yeah, then step by step got into snakes and stuff. And yeah, my parents were very supportive about my hobby because they knew I was very passionate about everything. But they always watched that it won't take over. Like my mother always said, yeah, nice species, but you can have it when you live alone. It didn't, got too much until I moved at my own place. And then, everything came together. And then I started keeping mostly colubrids and getting more and more into plants. And I think that's something I also display a lot on my Instagram, like spamming all the poor reptile people with my plant shit. I hope I don't annoy anyone with that. But yeah, I think these are my
I love it.
main interests. Thank you. Colubrids.
Yeah.
Plants.
So what does your collection look like right now as far as species go that you're working with?
In animals or in plants or both?
I guess animals to start.
Yeah, okay. So I don't have like a lot of animals. It's always funny when you tell that to people that aren't into herpetology, like, I just keep like 5 snakes, and they're what? 5 snakes? But I think in our bubble, it's not that much. So right now I have 5 snakes. I have one male Drymarchon melanurus unicolor, like the unicolor cribo, Drymarchon corais, the yellowtail cribo, one old corn snake, like one of my first snakes. I think I have him for around 12 years now. Won't give him away. I have a pair Elafe carinata, the Chinese king rat snakes. Really enjoy these. They are very shy and defensive, but very cool snakes. And I used to have a pair Lygophis anomalus. These are some very small species of colubrid from South America, like Paraguay and Uruguay. And I've searched a lot for more of them, but unfortunately, I didn't find more. And the breeder texted me that hers all died, and shortly after mine also died. So I don't keep this species anymore, but I would like to. And that's it with snakes for now. And I also have Anolis trinitatis in like this. Yeah, it's not really a greenhouse. It's like a big vivarium with plants. I built it very similar to the ones that Ben and Flo had that are also on the podcast. And I have one Lepidophyma flavimaculatum, these little crocodile night lizards. Yeah, and I think one dart frog and some spiders, but nothing special. Yeah, so that's it with the animals. And with the plants, I have a list here on my computer, and it's not there I think there are some species missing, but I think we are around 180 species of plants and counting. Yeah, I always was interested in plants. I had like the classic Epipremnum aureum, the Monstera and stuff for longer, but it all went its way during the pandemic because I was like, oh yeah, plants are cool. It's a cool collecting hobby, and got more and more into that over the last 3 years. And yeah, it's mostly aroids like Anthurium species, Philodendron and Monstera species. But right now I want to diversify everything a little bit to, don't just go into some species and be a bit open-minded. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems to me from like your social media presence and everything that you tend to blend these interests, with the plants and the reptiles, and you keep in naturalistic planted vivaria, from what I can tell, which is something that I think that a lot of people probably hearing that list of colubrids that you just mentioned would not think to pair them with plants because they're such active species. So I'm curious how that's gone for you. How have you managed that? And also, what draws you to that particular like method of keeping?
Yeah. I think I should start at the beginning when I got into like keeping reptiles. I didn't have like a mentor or friends that were sharing this hobby. All of my friends were like interested, but not about keeping these. So most of the time I was doing it for myself, especially when I was younger. And I was looking up a lot of things on the internet, checking social media, and read a lot. And I stumbled across a Facebook group, a German Facebook group that was called Naturnahe Vivaristik. So it's like close to nature vivariums. And I think the group isn't active anymore, but there were some people that were very long in the hobby and had great enclosures for their animals, very naturalistic, bioactive, you name it. And I saw that and I was stunned and was like, oh, I want to do that too. So I learned a lot from that group, checked everything. I wasn't very active there, but I read everything and tried to get that into my methods of keeping. And so one came to another, and I started to keep my animals more naturalistic. But I don't keep all of my snakes with plants right now. For example, the Elaphia carinata, they have a naturalistic, have each one naturalistic setup with a lot of bamboo and stuff. But they don't have plants right now because the problem is I used some sealed wood for the enclosures. And I don't think it would be a problem to combine these species with plants. But I'm a bit worried if everything gets a little bit too humid or I'm always watering the plants, that something will drip into the sealed wood. And I don't really trust in that. So maybe I have to figure out some kind of pot that keeps the water from the wood surface. But my biggest animal, it's my Endromachon corais male, lives in a fully planted enclosure, and that works out very well so far. Let me check. He's around 2 meters, and I got him in 2021, and in that year, he also moved into like a big PVC enclosure that I planted from the beginning. And most of the plants that I put in there at the beginning are still thriving, still doing good. But when you do something like this, you have to be aware of the losses that you make. So sometimes it's a bit hard. I have had some of my favorite philodendron and Anthurium species in there, and for months it can go very well, and they look untouched. And one day he decided, yeah, let's climb over it, and he can brag like these beautiful leaves. But if these are like healthy plants, they will survive it. They will grow back. They will stay beautiful. So you need some patience and need the will to risk something. And yeah, I think it's very easy with a PVC or a glass enclosure. So something that's secured against mold, water going out and stuff. So you don't want to have this humid environment destroy the enclosure.
Right.
Yeah, and I started with normal soil and everything. And some of the plants I put in these, I don't know if you know these, there are some cages for plants that you use for ponds. They are like grid cages. Yeah, you know these. I use these to start in the enclosure. So for example, I took a philodendron marmite, put it in one of these cages, and then sealed everything on top with some mesh, so that just the plant was sticking out at the top. And then I planted it into the enclosure, and the plant has the chance to grow out of the bin, but the snake won't dig it out so easily. And that worked out very well for me. So the plants can grow their way. Is it with the roots? Is it with the upper part? But the core of the plant is secured against the animal, because especially with big colubrids, you know it from your spilotus, I guess. They can be very active. They are very curious and stuff. And so they can rip off plants very easily. And that way you secure the main part of the plant. And that worked out well. And I have very high humidity in there, strong lighting. That's always very important to have good lights. And I don't think I have like a secret or something. It works good.
I've had similar experiences with that, where it feels like often I honestly thought it would be more difficult to keep the live plants with the spilotes, but it hasn't really proved to be too much of a struggle. I mean, of course, like you said, you'll occasionally have them climb over something and smash it, or, break some leaf, but then they'll come back eventually. And I tend to notice that I feel like there are benefits, not just, obviously for me as someone who wants to look at a beautiful vivarium, there are benefits to seeing all these beautiful live plants, of course, for me. But I think that there are also benefits for the snakes, in that, I've spoken in the past, of course, about how the spilotes will drink out of the bromeliads, but I've also noticed that, particularly when new leaves are forming and they're very fresh and green and fragrant, the snakes will often come and smell them and kind of show interest in them.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's just curiosity, for them.
Yeah.
And it's like a form of enrichment, right? There's mental stimulation because something is changing in their environment, even if it's happening in a slow and subtle way, as the plants grow and put out new leaves or put out flowers or berries or whatever. So have you ever noticed anything like that? What benefit do you feel there is for the snakes to having those plants?
I think you also add multiple layers to your enclosures. So, for example, I like to have on the ground like a forest floor with branches like thicker and thinner and very thin ones, and a leaf litter and stuff. But the plants also fill the room. They tend to improve the air quality and stuff. And I think it's also great for snakes that are a little bit shyer, because it gives more options to hide. I also think it's a great kind of enrichment for them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that aspect of like the cover too, and just like how it does create these different layers. And I definitely see that sometimes with the Spilotes that like they'll be like under the light, but with also under the branches, creating a little
Yeah.
bit of cover, and security for them. So they're still getting that cryptic basking
Yeah.
behavior, but they're also still feeling protected, which is cool.
Yeah, they can
Cool.
find their
Well,
own way how they like it the most, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
but I think
Yeah.
one of the issues when people try out plants and snakes, especially snakes, I think is a problematic for some people. Um,
Mhm.
Most people don't really get into the plants, and then they say,
Mhm.
no, it's impossible. So for my indigo snakes that I keep, there aren't any books that I know. So when I read into these species, I was a lot in international Facebook groups, and
Mhm.
I saw what the experienced keepers wrote, and what they do to keep their animals thriving. And I asked the same questions, like, how can I keep these naturalistic? How can I keep these with plants? And
Mhm.
everybody told it, nah, don't even try. It's impossible. But
Yeah.
yeah, when you look around, uh, this, I don't want to sound salty or anything, but
Mhm.
if you look around, there are a lot of people that take an enclosure and throw in the same 5 plants that everyone finds at the hardware store
Mhm.
or at
Yep.
the next plant market. And that's not bad in particular. For the animal, it doesn't care if it's a species from Southeast Asia or Africa
Right.
or Central America. That's just for us. But you need to know the needs of the plants, and you need to know
Right.
the needs of your animal. And then you have to check, what can I combine? It's the easiest to go
Mhm.
with plants that are from the same region or at least the same
Mhm.
area. Um, because then the conditions need to be nearly the same.
Yeah.
But if you just take the usual plants and throw them in every enclosure regarding of what habitat these animals live in, I don't think that works out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. I think that, there's often, maybe that's part of the success that I've had on some level is that I've like, for my own nerdy reasons, have selected plants like very specifically from the same
Yeah.
areas where the snakes are from, but they do well, of course, because I'm adjusting for the same parameters, right? And so there's compatibility there right at the start. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's plenty of other plants from Southeast Asia and stuff that I could keep in those Bavaria that would work. But that's a good point that it's easy to overlook. Like, what are the actual needs of the plant, and are they even
Yeah.
compatible?
And especially with these, I think, larger colubrids with the dry
Mhm.
macon, it's,
Oh yeah.
most of the keepers have them like not in racks, but in very shallow, not very
Yeah.
bright, PVC enclosures with
Mhm.
just, some of these cork bark or stuff. And
Yeah.
I get that a plant won't survive very good if the lighting is not bright
Right.
or whatever the
Yeah.
plant needs.
Yeah.
So if you just take them out of the store and put them in like this, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. It's a whole other set of parameters that you have to
yeah,
consider.
but
Totally.
also you need to experiment a little bit. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
until you get there, it's normal that some plants die or don't feel well.
Oh yeah.
So you have to do some experimental stuff.
Yeah, of course. And for those of us who enjoy it, it can be fun. It can be
Yeah.
fun to do that experimentation, and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's always
Yeah.
fun, especially if you want to get into plants or if you want to get planted enclosures, I can highly recommend to get yourself like one of these semi-transparent or transparent boxes that you can get at any hardware store or Home Depot. And just put moss at the bottom, get some plants that you like that fit into your enclosures and put them in there. And there are a lot of plants that you can propagate just from cuttings. And it's fun to see them grow. It's fun to raise your own plants. And if these are plants that you want to have for your reptile enclosures, you can just make a little propagation station without much effort and without a lot of money. So that way you can just grow your own supplies. And that's always
that's a great way to do it. That's often how I've put plants in new Vivaria that I start, is I'll just take cuttings, isolate them for a while in like a grow container like that. And then those will be, my base plants to start with when I'm setting up a new vivarium.
Yeah. Or as a backup in case something happens to the other one. Yeah. Always good.
Yeah. It's a super good way to do it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool because like propagating things from cuttings too. It's so simple and I don't know, it's fun. There's some fun to it too, even in that. I'm always amazed, like that sometimes like, a snake will smash a leaf or something off and then I'll just stick it in the prop bin, just in case. And I'm amazed that these bedraggled leaves, will put down roots and actually start a whole new plant pretty successfully. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's lots of fun. And what's also very cool is propagating plants from seeds. Like for most of the Anthurium species that I keep, right in the pandemic, there was a very big hype around aroids. So everybody wanted to have them and stuff. And I wanted to have them too, but I didn't want to spend lots of money for them because when the demand is gone, nobody would ask that much money like a year later for these. And so most of the Anthurium species that I got, that I just bought the seeds and raised the plants. And that's also very rewarding. It's lots of fun to see like a big plant grow out of a little seed or a berry that you have. And if you buy some more, you can resell them or trade them with friends. And
that's a fun way to do it too. You can do all the trades, and I've done that with a few different people. Yeah, that's great.
It's perfect. As well with animals as plants, I think trading is the most fun rather than just selling things. It's always cooler to look, right, you have this and that, and I have that, and you recently told me you want that. How about we change? That's always cool. And very practical. For example, tomorrow I'll be at the Ham show, the Terroristica Ham. And I meet a guy who gives me some frozen feeder snakes for my Trimarchon, and he gets a bunch of plants. So saves me a lot of money, and he has nice plants.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, great way to keep the costs a bit lower in this hobby.
Yeah. So you said feeder snakes, frozen feeder snakes.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Is that a regular component of the diet for your Drymarchon?
Not like on a weekly basis, but I try to give them feeder snakes every now and then. I don't know if you discussed it yet on the podcast. Some people think it's a bit controversial, but I think an animal is an animal. If a rat has to die for my animal or a snake dies, it was alive. All of the times I'm looking for breeders of like boa species, python species or something. And if they have a big clutch of animals, there will be young animals that die on an early age, and some breeders maybe just throw them away, and others will put them in the freezer and sell them. So, I sometimes every expo or something, I try to get my hands on some already frozen snakes. And then I want to supply my indigo snakes with these because in nature, they seem to eat a lot of snakes. Not only, they have a very diverse diet, just like the Elaphia carinata as well. They also get snakes from time to time. And it's very interesting because both are also immune against the venom of other snake species that live there. I've seen a very crazy video once of a Dromechon coralis that ate a bushmaster at Lachesis.
Wow.
That was crazy. And I think in Texas and Florida, the Dromechon species that live there are known for eating the rattlesnakes and stuff. And in Asia, with the king rat snakes, they eat, I think I've read something that they can eat Naya atra and some, I don't know which, but some viper species also. And that's pretty interesting, I guess.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I try to provide the most diverse diet possible, for everything here. So for all the lizards, they're getting a lot of different insects, and the Polychris are getting different bits of fruit here and there if they'll accept it. They're very picky about their fruit, but the snakes too. I try to give them diversity. And I used to keep Drymarchon a long, long time ago. I kept mostly Corays, yellow-tailed Cribos, but I also had a blacktail at one point. And actually, when I was a child growing up, my dad had an Eastern indigo snake that I remember really clearly. Yeah. And but I used to feed my Corays indigo, my yellow-tailed Cribo some snakes every once in a while. And it was interesting that, the feeding response for them was pretty strong. They were eager to go for them. And I always think that that's a fascinating thing. It also makes sense because just the structure of their jaws, they've got these incredibly powerful jaws, but they don't have very broad heads, and they can't actually eat a very large prey item considering how large they are as a species. So they're really well suited to eating snakes.
Yeah. For example, like other snakes at that length would easily eat like rats or something, but for my 2 meters coralis, I don't think that I could give him a rat, but a 1 meter snake shouldn't be a problem. Maybe.
Totally. It's so interesting.
And
I've also
sorry.
I also just really enjoyed seeing these videos. I think I mentioned it maybe on the podcast before too, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, look up Texas indigo snakes and rattlesnakes, because Till mentioned, they'll eat the rattlesnakes, and you can tell that the rattlesnakes know the Texas indigos. They know what the Texas indigo wants to do. And they have the rattlesnakes do a really interesting behavior where they try to keep their head as low as possible, and they'll kind of elevate a coil above, because they know that indigo snake is looking to bite its head. And indigo is doing everything it can to get to the head. And it's a pretty interesting thing to watch how, these are age-old foes in some way. They know each other, and they're trying to one up one another. Exactly. You can tell the rattlesnakes are like, oh God, here we go.
Not again.
So,
but what you mentioned is very interesting. I love the feeding response of the indigo snakes. It's so cool. And their killing strategy is so different to most of other colubrids. So they won't constrict. They, like you told, they want to go after the head, and they have pretty strong jaws and pretty sharp teeth. Like I've seen a picture of a man who got a feeding bite from a 2 meters indigo snake, and the middle finger was cut open from a razor. It was needed to be stitched. It was all over the finger. And they practically kill through biting and just crushing their prey items down on the ground. And it's pretty brutal. And I'm very happy that mine eat frozen food, because that would be a mess. I think that would be impossible to keep them naturalistic if they would kill inside these enclosures. That would be a massacre, I think.
It really is an interesting thing to see. The first time I fed my Cribo when I got it, I was a teenager. at the time, and I didn't quite know that that's how it was going to be. But I fed it. I think I fed it a hopper mouse or something, and I remember yeah. I mean, it felt like it just grabbed the mouse and then just bludgeoned it to death against everything in the vivarium, and I was kind of like, oh my god, like that doesn't look very sophisticated, but it works.
Did you notice like the changes they have in their call it personality when they aren't smelling food versus when they are in the mood for food? It's like a different animal, right?
Oh yeah. My Crebo, it was actually one of the most gentle snakes I ever had. I know that often yellowtails can be pretty feisty, but he was this particular individual that I had, the male that I had a few different ones, but he was very mellow. Like if I was with somebody who was afraid of snakes, but wanted to hold a snake for the first time, he was the snake I would let them hold, But if food was around, forget it.
Yeah, it's great. I have like a similar story.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like my yellowtail, he's inside his enclosure, he's very alert. So I wouldn't just grab into it because he's used to get food from there. And I don't want my finger to be cut open. So with him, it's always, he's also very curious. When I was on vacation, my dad was very amazed because he and my mother were looking for my animals. And he said, that big one with the yellowtail always came to the window every time I was watering the plants. And it's such a curious animal. And with him, when I need to take him out, I just leave one side of the enclosure open and he will come and look outside, and then he will just crawl outside, and depending on how he lays, you can take him with the hand or you take a hook, and as soon as you have him outside, it's no problem. You don't need anything.
Oh yeah.
And the other one, the unicolor Caribou that I have that one longer than the yellowtail. He's also like you said, the calmest, relaxed, like a puppy dog, very, very shy. And it's also a friend of mine had a big snake phobia. It was like a school friend of mine. And one day she decided she wanted to conquer that fear of snakes. And that was one of the first animals that she heard was the unicolor Caribou. But on the days where he already smells food, when I come into the room with the mice, it's like this animal wants to kill me. He's instantly in this like S-like posture, and he will just go for the glass. He's just jumping at me and stuff. And,
oh my gosh, yeah.
And that moments I'm like, what am I keeping here? And he goes after everything that moves. And it's very interesting. But I've noticed that it's also very stressful for him. Sometimes when I fed him first and he had his meals and I was walking around in the reptile room afterwards, he stayed very stressed, and sometimes he reiterated his meal afterwards because of the stress. It happened like 2 or 3 times, and now I'm just sometimes when it's just food in the room, he stays calmer than when he already ate like one prey item. So I will feed all the other animals in the room, then he gets his food, and then I'm leaving the room and staying out of it for 2 hours or something, because even when you come in an hour, half an hour later, he's like searching for food, and it's like going red.
It's like a hyperactive feeding response. Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's interesting too, like you figure it out, like, okay, this is what I have to do. You're getting fed last. Those are those little like things that you just pick up along the way of keeping, these little strategies that we have that only come with experience, really. So it's interesting.
True.
I'm curious, like with the indigos, like one thing I often hear keepers remark about them is just that they seem more alert, maybe more intelligent even than a lot of other snake species. I'm curious what your impression of that is with them.
Yeah, I've read that too. And I also think these could be more intelligent than other snake species, but sometimes I ask myself, maybe I'm just biased because I read that before.
Yeah, totally.
Like it. Yeah, and for your own animals, you always want to think like, oh, yeah, there's something special.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, some people also told me that they have some similarities in the behavior, like cobra species, and these seem to be relatively intelligent too. And yeah, especially with the Coryas, he shows more often than the unicolor species, male, because the unicolor one is very shy, and when he sees me, he stands still and stays around, or he just goes into his box and waits until I'm gone. So yeah, it's harder to see some behavior with him. But with the yellowtail, he's in my living room in an enclosure for sure. And he's always also very interested in people. Like when I have guests and they're sitting at my table, he always goes where the people are and looks them, watches them, and you can recognize in his behavior that is a different behavior than when he goes after food. I think there's a general curiosity in this animal, like he wants to watch and observe what's going on. Who are these people? I would be, always wanted to try like target training with him because he's so active. But I haven't started it yet. I think I have to read into that topic more.
Yeah.
But I think it would be an interesting thing to try.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard of people doing that really successfully with Drymarchon, and also like puzzle feeders and things like that seem like they could be interesting to try. I've seen some interesting videos of Eastern indigos going through with puzzle feeders, like moving little knobs over to get to the food and stuff like that. And just interesting little behaviors to make them use their brains more, and see some interesting behaviors.
And great for their enrichment, like for very active snakes.
Exactly.
In a limited space.
Yeah.
I think you talked about this a lot on this podcast, like how much room can I even give a snake? And I think these things like that could be a great way to like, how can I say this? Like, you can't compensate the lack of space that they have in comparison to the nature, but I think you can at least make the most out of their space, and things like that can help. Sometimes I like to throw in like a shed from a different snake to the indigo snakes, and that's also something like you mentioned with the plants. It's like something different, and especially as a snake eater, they are very alert. What is going on? What is that? And
what is this?
Check it out. So it's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I do that with the Spilotes as well. So what is it about Colubrids particularly that draws your interest? Is it that like kind of more active behavior? Is that kind of what has brought you mostly to Colubrids in your collection?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the start it was like, okay, they're smaller species, they're affordable, don't get huge. I always wanted a tiger python or a boa constrictor when I was smaller, and my parents were like, I don't think so. Understandable. Colubrids are mostly harmless. They don't take up that much space, and I think that's how it started for me. To keep me away from like the really big snake species. And then it went on with the fascination because of their behavior. And it's interesting because I've kept some species of Tamnophis, like the garter snakes. I've seen some similarities in their behavior to the indigo snakes, and someone even called them like little brother of the indigo snake or something like this. And they also are so active, like to watch you, follow every movement. And I had one that has also had like a crazy killing technique with the already dead fish or mice, that she would go all over her enclosure and throw the fish at the glass here and throw the fish at the glass there. And I was like, oh no. Yeah, but that made it very interactive for me. And yeah, it's just cool to watch an animal that just don't lays around and interacts and wants to check you out and stuff. Yeah. I think that's how it started. But sometimes I'm thinking, like, I don't think that I would go into boar or python species. They are for sure very cool species, but I don't think that would be something for me, especially with the plants and the room that I want to give my animals. But I really would like to get into vipers and boiga species one day. But the problem is, in the part in Germany where I live, these are prohibited. So yeah, no venomous snakes for me. But that's okay too.
Wow. Yeah. I hear you on that. I think that if I had the ability to keep vipers here, I would be really tempted to. I can technically keep rattlesnakes, the species that are native to California. Most of them I can keep legally here, but that's quite complicated even. But if I could keep things like, Bothriechis, and I would struggle not to have something like that here, but maybe it's for the best.
Yeah, true. It's especially with vipers, they're so cool and obscure and crazy looking species. I can't name them all, but they're so great and interesting. And I would really love to get into that because, when you have something like a big planted vivarium with all the plants from the habitat, and then these small to medium-sized vipers that look crazy or have horns, like the Eilish viper or something, that would be so perfect. And these are for sure good with plants, and that would be pretty easy to set up. But the other hand is talking about the practical part of natural keeping. For me, I don't have dangerous animals. So okay, I can get a nasty food bite from an indigo snake and maybe need to get some stitches, but that's it. And it's a different thing when you have I would love to have a 2-meter enclosure with some tiny vipers in it. But if you need to trim some plants that don't see your vipers, it can get very, very dangerous. And maybe exactly. It's for the better that I can't move myself into that direction here.
Yeah, totally. That totally makes sense. I think that it's similar for me with what I do here. It's just, you don't want to get into a place of complacency, where you're kind of, I will just go trim this plant over here, and then you find yourself in a dangerous position. Yeah.
Is it, are venomous snakes in general prohibited in California, or except the native ones? So not just some
exactly.
species.
It's pretty much everything. I mean, most rear-fanged species are fine to keep. I think that there are a couple different species that are prohibited, like Thelatornis genus, Dysphalidus genus. You can't keep them here in California, but boiga, people keep boiga with no problem here. I used to keep boiga. I had dendrophylla a long time ago, and some other species, but it's interesting that I'm not particularly sure why you can't. And I imagine there's maybe if you have like like if you have an institution of some kind, you could probably acquire special permits to have them on like public display, that kind of thing. But even that's quite rare. I don't really see a lot of facilities with lots of venomous snakes in California. I think and likely it's probably just because of the hassle of getting in the permits and all of that. So, and I'm sure that there are people that keep, that have cool vipers in California that no one knows about. But
for sure.
But yeah, it's interesting. It varies so much from state to state. Just like where you are in Germany. There are parts of Germany, right, where you can keep vipers without an issue.
Yeah, it's like in Germany we also have like something like a federal system. Like we have the different countries, like Bundesländer are they called in German, and every country has some room to declare their own laws in some kind of way, as soon as they don't go against the German law that stands over on top of everything. And so is it with the laws around the venomous reptiles. And there are, like in Bavaria, the venomous reptiles were also prohibited with a list of genus that aren't allowed to keep. And the part of Germany and West Germany where I live had no rules at all up until some years ago. And so I could have gone to the Terra Rustica in Hamm like tomorrow and just walk into the venom room, and I could have bought any venomous snake that I want to keep without any need of registration or stuff. And then there was this problem that I think it was a monochid cobra escaped in 2018 or 2019, and it was huge on the media. And everybody was like, ban these animals, and they did, and they took like the list of genuses of snakes that are forbidden in Bavaria and just brought them over at our law. And if you kept species from that list to that point of time, you had to fulfill some things, and you could keep them. Like, I think you needed to have an insurance and had to report them all to your local government or the federals. And then you can keep them, but you weren't allowed to get new individuals. You just keep the individuals you already have. And for me, it was impossible to get some. And that's kind of how it went. I think you can still keep Philodrias, Toxicodrias, how are they called? The black snakes from Africa that Ben also has.
Grasshopps,
they are also allowed. And some others, but no viper species, no elapids, and so
interesting. Have you noticed one thing I'm curious about with just kind of more general trends? Like, I've noticed that it seems in the past few years, maybe since the pandemic or around then, that colubrids have been becoming a bit more popular here in the United States. Like for a long time, it felt like there's so much emphasis on boas and pythons. Of course, ball pythons in particular are just a huge market on their own. But the interest in colubrids seems to be surging on some level. I'm curious have you noticed a similar thing in Germany? What do you notice in terms of trends? What seems to be most popular, get the most interest from people?
Yeah. So that's also something where I'm kind of biased because I'm always looking at colubrids.
Of course.
It has been the main theme for a long time. But I also think, like, from social media in general, you see more colubrids. I think also the Elaphe carinata got a little bit more attention over the last years for some time during the pandemic. Yeah, and I think there has been a little bit more interest in them, but still, when you go to the big European expos, or at least the ones that I sometimes go to, it's like Hamm in Germany and Houten in the Netherlands. It's mostly ball pythons, boars, and yeah, I think that's a never-ending trend. And yeah, every few tables you see some interesting mix of colubrids, but yeah, it's
Interesting.
It's you won't find like the rare shit on the tables most of the time.
Yeah. So it's the same as here, probably.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm curious about just like in terms of your personal kind of keeping, what are your kind of metrics for success? Like, what are you striving to do as a keeper? And do you have any goals, like long-term goals as a reptile keeper? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think there was some influence from your podcast and the general discussion about the ethics and like the talks that I had with my friends about reptile keeping. And I think I use sometimes the plant hobby to compensate a little bit this will to like collect and get more and more. Because it's easier with plants, and I think it's more ethical with the plants because I can just stack them here, and if I lose interest in a particular species, it's not that hard to give them away or sell them or something, and you don't have to. Of course, you want to take proper care of them, but it's always something different if like a plant is not thriving that good, like compared to an animal. And right now I want to mostly keep the animals that I have. I don't plan to get any new additions right now. But that has to do with some personal things right now, because next year I need to move to another place because the son of my landlord wants to move into my flat, so I have to leave. But this will be just a temporary flat for 1 year until I will move together with my girlfriend because she's studying somewhere else, and then we will search a new place together. And long story short, that makes planning a bit hard right now, because if I'm getting new animals and I know that I need to move in around a year, and I don't know in what kind of flat, how much space will I have and stuff. It would be difficult, especially to get summer animals. I would love to have like a female, at least from my yellowtail. That would be very cool to be able to breed them. But these are also animals, because they're snake feeders. You can't keep them together very good. And so my priority right now is to make it into a like ongoing process to improve my keeping methods, to like get the best out for all of my animals. And when I'm finally at a flat where I know that I will stay for longer, then I will check if I can give the animals that I already have more space. And then maybe I will add some more species. But right now, most likely I would to get some females from the males, at least for the indigo snakes. Maybe breed every now and then, but with the reptiles, I see myself more like as a hobbyist, like right now, and I just want to keep them as good as I can. And I would love to expand the plant hobby to. Would be cool to have like a little shop or something, or a side hustle with them, because that's nice to grow them. And when I came back from 3 weeks vacation and 4 weeks not staying at home. Everything was so overgrown that I was forced to sell some plants, some cuttings, and propagate something. So I think sooner or later I will get to this point where this could be a nice little shop or something. Or maybe I thought it would be cool to like have a table at one of the reptile expos once or twice a year to sell some plants and expand my network in the hobby and stuff. And I think that's some direction I would like to go. Just keep the animals as a hobbyist. Care for them as good as I can, and maybe to get a little more professional about the plants.
Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. Let's hope for that.
I definitely hear you on this, like the struggle of like knowing that you're going to be moving, and moving with reptiles is not fun. It's very stressful for the animals, but also I think especially for the keepers. I think that this last move I just did with my reptiles, like it probably took a year off my life.
Oh wow. How many animals did you have at that point?
It was just so stressful. Oh my gosh. I don't even know, because, with all the babies and everything, I never keep count. It's always shifting, with babies here and moving along. But, I don't have like a large collection by, reptile keeper standards. I'd say it's like small to medium sized collection, but the thing about it for me is more that, the style of herpetoculture that I keep isn't simple. It's not a simple thing to just, put the new enclosure right there and just plug the light back in and put the snake in and you're done. It's like, it's such a complex thing, because I have to take apart the whole misting system and put together a whole new misting system with new tubing, because I'm in a new room and it's different, lengths of tubing to fit the room and all of that stuff. And so it's amazing how complicated it gets quickly. And because, I've been slowly adding to the system and improving it over time, the process of it becoming more complex has been very, very gradual. Yeah. But once you have to start it all over again from scratch, you realize how complex of the system you've created for yourself. And it can really be a lot. So I hope that you can find a comfortable place, with your partner, and you won't have to move for a good long time, because I just know how that can be. Thank you. But I just really appreciate that sentiment too, of just like, wanting to like provide the best for what you have, and expand for what you have before bringing on more. I think that, I hear that from people more and more. It seems to be like that's a perspective that is more common in herpetoculture than it once was. There was a lot more emphasis on like having as many species as you possibly can, or as many animals as you possibly can in the space that you have, and now it's more about like, well, what's the substance of the space that you have, and like, what's the substance of each setup that you have for your animals. And I don't know, I think that's just refreshing to see that slowly starting to shift, and on a broader scale in herpetoculture. And I'm curious if that's like something that you feel like speaking broadly about the state of herpetoculture in Germany, and how you perceive it. What do you see changing? Do you see anything changing or growing, or curious?
Yeah, at least with the people that I know, I think it's something that I definitely see. And of course, you participate in the things that your peers do. So, of course, if you go in that direction, most likely you are influenced by your friends, or you are influencing your friends. With I think all of the people I'm hanging around with the reptiles in Germany, it's going that way. But I don't know if I can speak for the general people, for everyone, not, but I think maybe social media also is an influence into that direction. Like generally speaking, like all over the globe, because you see these very nice enclosures online and see what people are building and stuff, and are like, ooh, I want to do that myself. And maybe this got more people into that kind of style of keeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that like something that you would like to see more of, you think, in herpetoculture? Like if you could nudge all of herpetoculture in one direction or another, like what would you like to see more of in the future, and as it changes and grows?
Yeah. So I'm not a biologist, so I can't say this is 100% the best for the animals or something, but it's my preference for sure. So I would love to see herpetoculture change into that direction. Yeah, more natural style of keeping, and doesn't have to be like the perfect replica of the habitat, but like the best for the animal. Like I think Phil said it in one of the episodes that I was listening to, like what's like the ecosystems also change. Like we have a lot of animals that follow the humans and hang around villages and stuff. So we will never know exactly what's the best for them, because the animals in the wild will do that what keeps them alive. But I think, it would be great to see some more changes into the direction that people also get more information and try to constantly improve their keeping. It's always, I would never say I'm doing the best right now for my animals and I can't do it better. I think that's very ignorant. So my goal is to constantly rethink my style of keeping, and when I'm able to, I want to improve it as far as I can in matters of space, finances, and time and everything, of course. And I would like to see that more, not just these. It worked for the last 10 years. Now I'm doing it forever. I don't like this mentality.
I feel like that's another thing that seems to be growing more and more, that I hear from more people, is just kind of like this ethos towards gradual improvement, and I think that's something that Dylan, has spoken to a lot on his podcast, our host network. He's always, I think he said that from the beginning, that's really what he's for, is gradual progression. And I definitely share that mindset as well. And I think that sometimes we can come up against issues with it where I think sometimes people perceive that to be motivated by like almost a kind of like shame, like feeling like we shouldn't have reptiles, or feeling like we feel ashamed of what we're doing and keeping them. And I don't necessarily think that has to be what's driving it. I think it could also just be like passion and curiosity and all these other things as well. And, and if shame is playing a role, maybe there's some utility to it in that respect. But I certainly feel like I feel happy, with what I've set up for my animals, and like proud of my animals. And also at the same time, I'm like always thinking about, okay, what's the next iteration, and what's the next dream that I can try and fulfill for them. And,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's something that also needs to be talked about, because I think you're making a very important point, because it is an exhausting process. Always reflecting, always rethinking, and this shame that you mentioned, I recognize this in my feelings as well. And sometimes I look at these animals and say, should I keep them at home? What am I doing and stuff? So if you think what you can do better, you most likely will get to the point where you can ask yourself, should I keep these animals? And is this the right thing? But yeah, and I'm not really coming to a clue what's the right thing to do, but also there is, at least for the animals I'm keeping right now, no alternative. I can't just go to Central America and release them. These are all captive bred, and yeah, if I sell them, I don't know where they will land. So I think the best way is to go on, and yeah, I think the hobby definitely has a lot of advantages. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So like conservation and stuff. And it's important to push into that direction. And that way we can, keep to the hobby and contribute in a meaningful way also for the nature and the animals in the wild. And this is something I would like to see more, and this is something that I want to do more. So maybe do something for conservation would be great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's something that herpetoculture, like an area within herpetoculture, where I think we as like a global community could do a lot more. We could find ways to be more active participants in conservation, and hopefully, like, over time we'll be able to kind of repair some of the wounds that have formed between conservation and herpetoculture, because I think that sometimes these communities, the scientific community and the private hobbyist community can kind of butt heads a little bit. But of course, as in all such communities, like, we have a lot to learn from one another, and we can give a lot to one another. So hopefully over time we can kind of balm those wounds a little bit and do something different for the betterment of everyone involved, and particularly for the animals involved. But I know that you recently went on quite the amazing travel excursion. And I would feel remiss if I didn't ask you about it. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit about, like, this trip that you were just on. I've been seeing a little bit on your social media about it, but I haven't heard any details, so I would love to hear it from you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it was a very nice trip. I haven't shared a lot. I think I posted a video of where I cut some footage of the Komodo dragons. But so far, I think that's all I shared. But there will be more for sure. My partner and I, we went to Indonesia for 3 weeks in total, starting off at Bali.
Wow.
It was our first time in Southeast Asia, so everything we did was more or less touristic. So we weren't the big adventurers running around. I don't want to pretend I was just alone going through the bushes or something. But it was a great experience. A very interesting culture. Like 90% of Indonesia is a Muslim country. But on Bali, 90% of the people are Hindus. Hinduistic. Yeah. And that's cool when you travel through Indonesia, you see the difference, because on Bali, everything looks like a temple. They have, I think, more temples than houses. And every morning they offer something for the gods, and everything smells like these, I don't know, how are these called? These
incense
sticks. Yeah,
incense, right.
And it's more or less a tropical island, and everything is green. And when you walk through a temple and there are water features, you see like one of the Varanus species. It was which one was it? Varanus salvator bivitatus. You saw them a lot. You saw there were a lot of species that were like infamous in the reptile community. Like the take geckos were everywhere. We had one night we had one in our in the room we slept in, and I was sleeping, and these are so fucking loud when they scream. You wake up with what's going on. And
gecko.
Yeah. Yeah. My partner, she was very amused by these because every night you hear them. Yeah, and we were on Bali. And there I booked a trip with Bali Reptile Rescue. These are some guys that are passionate about the reptiles on the island. And it was very interesting to see because we made a night trip. It was like 3 guys from Bali Reptile Rescue and 2 like older rocker Australian guys that also booked the trips. And
nice.
We were like out and about for 5 hours, driving on the scooters and to different locations, searching for reptiles. And I'm very happy I did this because in all the 3 weeks in Indonesia, I haven't seen a single snake except on this trip. So like, even if you spend most of your time with animals, when you go into the wild and it's your first time really helping, I couldn't find anything.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
We had some very nice species. We had like the green Trimeresurus insularis, a lot of Dendrelaphis pictus, the common bronzeback, Pareas carinatus, these little slug-eating snakes. We also saw then common wolf snake. I got bitten by one, and it was not the crate that they are imitating.
Thank goodness.
Luckily, thank good. Yeah, it was very fun. I held it and it bit me, and the one guy, oh no, crate bite, just for fun. And when I was back in bed, I was laying there. Luckily, no crate bite. Or was it? And then I started Googling because I was like. But I think I would have been somewhere else.
You would have known.
Yeah, I would have known. But speaking of crates, we also saw one.
Wow.
But more of that later. That was very cool. We also had Ahaetulla prasina, the vine snakes. We had turkeys. We had like one of these green crested lizards from Indonesia. And then we visited different spots and looked for them with the torches, and it was very cool, first time helping for me. And these guys, mainly rescue snakes, because on Bali there are loads of hotels, lots of tourists, and you see construction sites everywhere. And especially in the center, in the south part, the nature is more and more declining because they build so much there. And I talked to a lot of people at the places where we stayed and asked them, hey, what snakes do you have here? What do you do when you find the snakes? And they were all afraid of snakes and just had like the typical myth stuff and nothing scientific. And they said, yeah, if we see a snake, we kill them. And these guys from Bali Reptile Rescue, they go to the hotels when they find a snake and call them and re-release them, and they finance themselves through trips like the one that I did. And they also had 3 snakes that they catched in some facilities. One reticulated python, another of the vine snakes, and a Malayan kite. And that was one of my highlights, was Bungarus candidus. And I think this size or something. And very cool to see one in real life and releasing that animal back into nature. That was great. And at the end of the trip, we got a call. Yeah, there's some snake in a hotel, and we drove there, and it was dog-teethed cat snake, the Boiga.
Oh, cool! Cynodon.
Yeah, very cool animal. And then we packed it, and on the way back to my place where I stayed for the night, we re-released it in the forest, and that was great. It was a great trip, great experience. Cool to see these animals, cool to learn a lot about these animals from the guys that live there and work most of the time with these snakes. And that was a great experience. And afterwards, we flew to Flores, to a city called Labuan Bajo. It's like a harbor city there. And we had booked 3 days little boat trip. We were like 22 people from all over Europe that also booked this trip, and the crew of the boat and one guide. And then we drove around the Komodo Islands for 3 days and went snorkeling every day, went on little islands, watched the flying foxes emerge out of some cave during the sun set and stuff. It was great. That was one of the best parts. And the coral reefs were so great. I saw like a sepia squid. Do you know these? Yeah, like this size right in front of me. A lot of turtles and stuff, and some fish that I only knew from the zoo. It was so great snorkeling, and I loved it. And yeah, we also saw the Komodo dragons. Like a big part of the Komodo National Park is close to the public, I think, and there are only little parts that you can visit. And they told us before that they have mating season, and they're not sure if we'll see some, but we were lucky and saw 4 individuals, relatively big.
Wow.
And that was very great. Yeah. And after that, we went back to Bali for some nights. Then we visited Lombok, the island next to Bali. Also visited a bat cave there. And on Lombok, they also have like the blue insularis, like on the Komodo Islands.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't see them. I asked every local I met on the Komodo Islands and on Lombok and asked about the blue snakes. No interaction with these animals, unfortunately. That would be cool to see too. And that's it.
You got to save something for next time.
Yeah. Do you know someone? Do you want to come with me?
That sounds good.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. Yeah. So now I got a little bit of taste for herping trips. First time over there, and I would love to do something like this more often. So maybe
that's amazing.
Let's hope for next year or something.
Yeah, we got to do it. Some sort of herping trip. It'd be fun. An international trip. That sounds like an incredible experience. I mean, I think I probably would have been overjoyed seeing just half of those species, so like to see that kind of diversity and everything is pretty amazing. It sounds like especially that night with the Bali reptile rescue guys was an incredible time. Definitely. Really amazing.
And I was very surprised that we saw this diversity of snakes, because we were more or less in the center of Bali, where a lot is going on. We didn't move into like a primary forest or something. These were like greener parts, normal forests. One time we were at a rice field, and pretty close to where the humans live. And very cool to find these animals there. But the question is, how long will you find them still there? And they also have the king cobras on Bali, but more in other parts. And we obviously didn't see a king cobra. That would be great too.
That's one species that is on like a short list of like animals that I really want to see at some point in my life, in their native range, is a king cobra, one of the species, just because they're just, it's just such an iconic animal, it's like, for me, it feels up there with like seeing a brown bear or seeing a tiger or something. It's like, king cobra is just, obviously it's probably much easier to see than a tiger, but it's still a pretty special thing to get to witness.
Must be very impressive. Would love to see them nesting, but I think that's more dangerous, but it would be very cool to see them patrol around their nest and stuff. That would be so great. I saw once adult female king cobra at a local zoo. And that was
Uh-huh.
already impressive because they weren't that much visitors. And she was like coming to the glasses, watching me going around. And I was already amazed, and I couldn't imagine how it would be to see them in a forest in their native range. It must be so great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember watching like National Geographic and stuff documentaries as a child, and seeing them nesting. And there was one really good one that had Rom Whitaker from the Madras Crocodile Bank in India talking about them, and really left an impact on me. Just like seeing this amazing footage of their nesting behavior and the babies emerging, and just such a fascinating thing. It makes me feel like glad to live on the earth, at the same time as creatures like that. That's always how I feel about things like that. It's like, wow, it's so cool to get to be here and witness these amazing things.
Yeah, that's something important to say, because most of the time we tend to like look into the past and wonder, why couldn't I witness these animals? And sometimes I think we lose the view for the amazing creatures that we share the planet with right now, and how important it is to like save them, or leave them some room to evolve properly. Probably.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely it's a hard thing, being a lover of nature, and a lover of biodiversity, to see the kind of broad scale decline that we're seeing in that, in these times. But it also, I think, it does underscore and emphasize the value of that biodiversity and the appreciation that I have for it, to know that it needs our help. So hopefully we can do more, in the coming years as things continue to just get more and more complicated. But not to leave on too dark of a note, we're coming up on about an hour and a half already of talking, which is kind of amazing. And should probably come to a close here soon. But is there anything you wanted to discuss on the podcast before we kind of go to our closing question that we might have missed?
I don't think we missed anything right now. Yeah, I thought we strive through a topic really close that I think is always interesting when it's like the connection. I've listened to one of your older episodes recently, and I think you said, as much as I hate social media, or something like this. And I quickly just wanted to point out what an interesting role social media has in our hobby, because for me it was always like I told in the beginning, in my friend group and the people around me that I knew personally, there wasn't anybody like keeping these animals or was into that kind of stuff. So I researched everything on my own, and with social media, I had the opportunity to get to know other people, to like gain knowledge from them, and be inspired and stuff like that. And that's something I think about a lot, because sometimes social media is so stressful and annoying, and I don't like it too. But on the other hand, it gives us so many nice opportunities to gather knowledge all around the world and get to know other people all around the world. I mean, we are talking right now from California to Germany, and I don't know where this point is going, but I think it's interesting what role social media has in the hobby today. And to come back to that conservation part, it would be great if we would find a way to combine these things. And I think podcasts like this already have an impact on spreading awareness for problems like the decline of biodiversity and stuff. And I think that's at least a great thing, that more people have the opportunity to get to know these problems and that they can inform themselves about something like this. And sometimes I wish people would use social media more wisely with that in the mind. But also it's so complex, and these apps are so addictive, and you recognize yourself just scrolling brainlessly through some stupid videos instead of like connecting and talking about something that you love. And sometimes I think we need to remind ourselves, there is a real life out there, but also we can take the advantage of social media and try to improve the real world, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a complicated thing, because I totally am with you, where the benefits that have come to my life, and the connections that I've made are undeniable, and absolutely a credit to social media and its power, this podcast certainly wouldn't exist without it. I wouldn't know Phil wouldn't know me. And it's so funny, it's like, I didn't even, like, I didn't participate like on like Facebook or anything like that, for example, until I got back into reptiles, because that's like, I was like, but back in the day, when I was a teenager and keeping reptiles, those conversations weren't really happening on social media. They were more on like forums and stuff like that. And in the time that I was away, everything migrated to like Facebook and, and Instagram and stuff like that. And so I've entered into participation with these platforms, and I definitely have like my critiques of them and all, and of course how they impact our brains and how we use them. But at the same time, of course, I don't want to discount like the real benefits that they have to individuals and communities. And like you say, there's something to, there's a lot to consider about like what can we do to like use that power wisely, and figure out ways, as communities and individuals to like really leverage it for its highest use. And, I'm skeptical about that most of the time, but sometimes I'm optimistic about what that might look like in the future. And it's definitely a really interesting thing to consider. And we see it a lot, even within, it's so interesting, like within even the herpetoculture community, let's say just even here in the United States, it's so interesting how much division there is, and like you look at like the Facebook groups, and it's like, the people in this community and this group don't even interact with the community over there in that group. And in some ways it's funny, because it's like these tools or platforms that are superficially like meant to connect us and create, more connections. Sometimes it can also have the opposite effect, where like at one time, 30 years ago, it's like, if you were a reptile keeper, you were just a reptile keeper, like it's like, oh, the reptile keepers, they're the weirdos over there, and now it's like, well, I'm not a reptile keeper. I'm actually a crested gecko keeper. And like the rest of the reptile keepers are weirdos over there,
Yeah, that's true.
And so,
especially,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. I just was just making that point, that it's interesting how it's in that ways it's kind of separated us. But I think that I have seen more conversation recently about like trying to integrate more of the reptile community, so that both that we can learn from each other more, and also we can present a more unified front, against like in resistance to the forces of opposition that want to, make it so that we can't keep reptiles anymore.
Yeah, and, true.
I think that there's a lot of value to things like, going to reptile shows and participating in like your local herp clubs, and, going to symposia and stuff like that. They help in that, because you're inevitably going to be mixing with more people than you otherwise would in your little Facebook groups. So
Yeah,
hopefully we can do that more and more.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also a different kind of people, especially when I think of like the old guys here in Germany that are keeping animals for decades. Like the breeder where I bought my Anolis, I think he's very well known in the Anolis community, at least here in Germany. And he's a very old guy, and it was totally different than the interaction with him, because when we wrote each other, and he was like, I already wanted to buy animals from him, and he was like, yeah, just visit my place and we talk and we see. And then I was just 2 hours at his place. We were talking, and then I went home and we decided when I can pick up animals. And it was totally different kind of interaction, not just this, you buy something online, it arrives in a box and everything is anonymous. So, and these people, you won't find like these people on Instagram or something, most likely.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to remember ourselves there's also a life outside of social media.
Yeah, so well said. So well said. Yeah, I was actually just talking about this recently with a friend of the show, Chris Sharp, who is, he's a great keeper of reptiles and colubrids in particular, and he knows a lot of these, these old timers who have been keeping colubrids and stuff and keeping reptiles for 30 or 40 years or longer, and a lot of them don't participate in social media at all, and like hopefully we'll be able to have conversations with more folks like that on the podcast too, because that's part of what Phil and I want to do with the podcast, is to create space where we can kind of chronicle these discussions with these keepers who, some of them just never really, get a platform to speak to that stuff. And some of them don't want to, which is totally, of course, I respect that, but some might be willing. And, I know that there's so much that we have to learn from those folks. So hopefully we can make it happen.
It would be great, because I think, there are people that just don't want to get a platform or don't want to interact on social media. But I think that, especially with the older folks, there might be some that just say, oh, I'm too old for this. I don't know what Instagram is and stuff. And maybe they would like to interact with other people, and would be happy about someone who just sits them in front of a computer so they can talk to you. And it would be cool if you make it easy for them and make their knowledge accessible for people that are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's my homework.
Great.
Got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Till, I really appreciate you coming on the show and making some time to share your knowledge and your enthusiasm. And I know the final question that we always close with. So I'm curious, for you personally, why herpetoculture?
I thought I would be better prepared for this question, as it was obvious to come.
Snuck it up on you there.
So I don't have like a fancy one-liner or something, but for me, I just love this whole thing, like the whole process. It's not just keeping an animal or owning an animal, it's like everything around it. I love making up my mind doing the research, getting into this stuff. And I like also, I'm not like super handy with building stuff, but I enjoy it. So in Germany, we say Fusch am Bau. It's like when you just put stuff together and it's not the best quality. But I like building my own enclosures. I love setting it up, planting everything, and then doing the care for the animals, for the plants, sustaining the little system that you are working on. and also getting in touch with other passionate keepers and interacting with them. So making new little adventures like the herping trip and stuff. So it's like one topic that has so many different facets and so many different aspects that you can dive into it. And I love to have a little bit of everything and come together at my place. And yeah, love it. If that answers the question.
Yeah, of course it does. I totally relate to that. I mean, I've said it many times on here. I probably sound like a broken record in many ways, but I really feel like there's so much, herpetoculture just can inform you about so many other things in life. And it can be a vector, to expose you to so many other different topics and disciplines and curiosities and wonders about the world. And so I really relate to that sentiment about it's not just like keeping the animals or owning the animals. It's like everything that it elicits in us in the process of that. So
it's especially from the outside, it's often viewed as just collecting living things. But I think it's like the opposite. It's not just about owning. It's just so much more. And you can learn so much. I think that was already also discussed on here, but it's just, you can learn so much for the rest, for the other parts of your life that don't have to do anything with herpetoculture. But
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, very well said. Well, thank you for that, Till. Where can people find you on social media if they want to connect? Where's the best place?
It's just Instagram for me. It's tils.reptileroom. Till is TIL, like in until. And then, Tils Reptile Room. And if somebody has any questions or, just message me. I'm always happy to interact, get to know new people, and maybe we can have a nice chat about plants or something. Favorite topic.
That sounds great. All right. Well, I'm going to hit the button. Thank you again, Till.
Yeah. Thank you.